Yuru is a young, gifted boy with a strong sister complex who has spent his entire life in this secluded village. He was born at the break of dawn with his twin sister, Asa, and a prophecy foretells that he will one day command powerful demons, though Yuru himself has no idea about this prophecy. One day, after going out hunting, he returns to the village, and his friend Danji is there waiting for him at the entrance. He is relieved to see that Yuru made it back all right, but he's also annoyed that he went without inviting him along. Still, he can't exactly complain when Yuru managed to catch a pheasant all by himself. As they walk back into the village together, all the villagers greet Yuru, and he even offers to come help them with their work later today. But first, he needs to head home. Back home, Granny Yamaha and Danji's mother are busy chopping logs together, and when they see that Yuru managed to catch a pheasant, they are really impressed. Yuru asks Granny Yamaha how his sister Asa has been doing lately, and she tells him that Asa has been hard at work as usual. Yuru heads down into the cellar to see his sister, and behind a wooden cage, Asa is sitting in silence. It may look a bit unusual, but she's apparently perfectly fine with this arrangement, and as a matter of fact, she has a great relationship with Yuru. Yuru sits down next to the cage and starts telling Asa all about his hunting trip, and she's impressed by what he accomplished. However, Yuru isn't really happy about it because he was actually hoping to catch a boar or something. After all, this year's harvest has been pretty weak, so they might not have enough food to last the winter if he doesn't do something soon. Hearing that, Asa looks a little upset and asks if Yuru is planning to go down the mountain to find work, but he says he would never do that. He has been working on his hunting skills precisely so he doesn't have to go down the mountain. After all, he would never want to leave Asa's side, and she is happy to hear that. Just then, Danji's mom comes over to call Yuru out because Dara is here, and he probably doesn't want to miss him. Dara is the only person who routinely travels out of the village and back, and he always brings high-quality goods with him, like painkillers, genetically modified seeds, and all sorts of other things. When Yuru arrives, Dara asks him if there's anything he wants, but Yuru says he just wants something to give Asa, and Dara has just the thing. He tosses a ball over to Yuru, and he is grateful because this would be perfect for her. After Dara is done trading with the villagers, he leaves to head back down the mountain. Meanwhile, Danji and Yuru are busy hanging straw out to dry. Danji mentions that he really wishes he could go outside the village like Dara does. Yuru doesn't understand what the big deal is about the outside world, but Danji points out that everyone aside from Dara who has left the village has never chosen to come back, so it must be good out there. Even so, Yuru says he would be perfectly happy living the rest of his life in this village, and Danji can understand why, especially since he has Asa here. On that note, Danji tells Yuru that if he really cares about being with Asa so much, then he could just take her and leave the village together. But Yuru says that would never work because she has an important job to perform here. Just then, Yuru hears a loud rumbling sound. As he looks into the sky, he can see smoke trails in the air. Behind the scenes, a hand reaches out and crushes the barrier around the village, revealing it to the outside world. As the barrier comes down, Yuru and Danji can now see that the smoke was being created by a plane flying overhead, and the rumbling sound was from 2 helicopters. No one in the village has ever seen anything like it before. The entire village falls into chaos as the helicopters soar overhead. But this isn't a simple case of a secret village being discovered. This is a targeted military operation. The soldiers have been authorized to use deadly force, so the moment they encounter a few villagers, they immediately execute them. As more soldiers make their way into the village on foot, they begin opening fire, and gunshots echo all throughout the area. A few villagers run up to Granny Yamaha to ask if she knows what's going on. She tells them that it looks like the village's barrier was taken down somehow. She's not sure how it happened, but one thing is certain. The people invading the village are after Yuru, so they need to hide him before he gets caught. Yuru and Danji soon find the corpses of villagers who were taken out moments ago, and they are both horrified by the gruesome sight. But they can't stop now because they still need to check on their families. As they run up the staircase, they spot 2 soldiers standing there. Yuru doesn't hesitate at all before drawing his bow and striking them with arrows to the torso. Then, to finish them off, both he and Danji kick them in the head. They continue heading towards the peak, but Danji is a little worried about the fact that those dragons are still circling around the outer area. Yuru is starting to think that they might not be dragons after all, but either way, he doesn't think he'll be able to take them down with his bow, so it would be best to avoid them altogether. They soon make it to the left and right god statues, but Danji says they've still got a long way to go because he wants to check on his mom, and he's sure that Yuru must want to check on Asa. Danji is right about that, but Yuru actually has a plan to make it down to the cellar quicker. He runs over to the base of one of the statues and asks Danji to come help him move some of the stones. Danji doesn't understand what he's doing, but Yuru tells him to just trust the process and help. A few minutes later, once the stones have been removed, Yuru takes out a panel at the base of the statue, revealing a secret passage that leads straight down to the cellar. Danji had no idea that something like this even existed, but it's a good thing it does, because now Yuru can make it to Asa much faster. Meanwhile, back on the surface, a girl named Gabby has just been dropped off by a helicopter, right in front of a group of machete-wielding villagers. She seems to be unarmed, so the villagers aren't sure if she's a threat or not, but then she pinches her fingers, and all of a sudden, part of a villager's body gets bitten off. Kind of like Aki's fox bite. She then proceeds to take out all the villagers one after another, leaving no survivors. A mother tries to take her kid and run before it's too late, but Gabby is too quick for that, so she takes the mother's head off as well. The child is filled with absolute terror at the sight of her mother in pieces, but just when she thought the same thing was about to happen to her, Gabby tells her she doesn't need to worry because she has a rule against biting kids. However, that doesn't mean she's against mentally scaring them. Now that the villagers here have been taken care of, Gabby makes a call to let the group's troops know that it's all clear for them to come up. But to her surprise, there's no response from them. And that's because the soldiers happened to run into Dara on the way down, and he didn't waste any time taking them all down. He isn't sure what could have gone wrong for the barrier to be taken down, but it's definitely going to cause problems. So he takes out his phone and makes a call to someone named Hana to tell her that he'd like to change the rendezvous point because the real Asa is definitely in danger. Meanwhile, down in the hold, Granny is being dragged along by Asa, and when she eventually comes face to face with the imitation of her, she is absolutely disgusted by the sight. So she raises her hand, and in the next moment, the Asa in the cage has her head blown open. Just after this happens, Yuru runs into the hold, and he calls out Asa's name in horror after seeing what happened, but to his surprise, the woman in front of him raises her hand and says she's his real sister, which is why she's here to take him back, but first she's going to kill everyone else in this godforsaken village. Yuru has no idea what this woman is talking about, but he refuses to believe that she's his sister, especially not after she just killed the person he's known as his sister for years, so he draws his bow and prepares to fire. Asa uses her powers to block the shot, causing one of the hold's walls to be blown out. Meanwhile, on the ground, Dara is currently taking out as many foot soldiers as possible and making his way towards the hold, but he has to play it safe on the way there because he can't risk letting the helicopter follow him back. Unfortunately, he ends up coming face to face with Gabby, and he can immediately tell how much of a threat she is because he can see her demon teeth as clear as day. Gabby is surprised that Dara can actually see them, and that makes this a lot more interesting. She sends her teeth at Dara, but he dodges out of the way and fires a few shots at her. However, she is able to block the bullets with the teeth, so Dara needs to get creative and tosses a grenade above her, and Gabby looks genuinely scared for a second. As the explosion goes off, we cut back to Yuru and Asa in the hold, and Asa realizes she went overboard even though she had only intended to block his arrow, so she apologizes because she's still not used to controlling her powers yet. As Yuru tries to pull himself out of the rubble, that ball he had been carrying rolls out of his shirt and bounces all the way over to the fake Asa's corpse, and the second it comes into contact with the blood, a black creature emerges and grabs the real Asa's arm. Yamaha then yells for Dara to get Yuru out of here as soon as possible, and a moment later, Dara shows up, grabs Yuru, and starts running. Meanwhile, Danji is checking up on his mother when he sees Dara dragging Yuru away, and he can't believe this is happening. After Dara brings Yuru out of the secret passage, he tells him they need to get down the mountain at once because it's not safe here anymore. But Yuru doesn't feel like listening because nothing makes sense to him anymore. Dara promises to explain everything to him once they make it to safety, but escape isn't really an option right now because they've got 2 helicopters circling them with snipers on board. This is really bad because they can't move from this spot now, and if Gabby manages to find them, then there's no way they're going to escape. However, Yuru is too preoccupied thinking about the fact that Asa might be dead. He did see her move a little before Dara dragged him away, but now he's not even sure if that was the real Asa or not. He also feels terrible about leaving Yamaha behind like that, and he still doesn't know who that woman who claimed to be Asa is. But she said she was going to kill everyone else in the village, and he doesn't understand why this happened. There really isn't time for Dara to explain everything, so he just hands Yuru a jade pendant and tells him to go stick it in the hole in the ground. Yuru outright refuses because there's no way he's going right into the line of sight of that sniper. But Dara knows that the sniper won't shoot Yuru because they are here to capture him alive, so he tells Yuru to just do it already, and he reluctantly agrees. Yuru runs over to the hole, but he finds it plugged up with a bunch of dirt, so he has to start digging it out. He eventually manages to place the pendant in the hole, and he turns to Dara to ask what he should do next. But a second later, Dara slams Yuru's head right into the ground, giving him a bloody nose and causing his blood to splatter onto the pendant. Yuru gets up and yells at him for it. But the final step of the ritual required Yuru's blood to be poured onto the pendant, and now that that step has been completed, everything is finally ready. The snipers prepare themselves to take out Dara once they have a clear shot, but before they can pull the trigger, the pendant activates and the two statues release the power seal within them. As a result, two powerful demons come flying out and begin ripping the helicopters to shreds, sending them crashing into the ground. And on the other side of the village, Gabby is horrified when she sees the choppers come crashing down. Not because she was friends with the pilots, but because they were supposed to be her ride home. So now that they are gone, she's going to have to walk all the way down the mountain. Meanwhile, back on Yuru and Dara's end, they come face to face with the demons who were sealed within the statues, left and right, and they both call Yuru their master. While Yuru is still in shock over the fact that left and right are actually real, Dara walks up to them and introduces himself. Left and right have had their eye on Dara for a while, so they recognize him as a retainer, and since he's here, Right asks him if he can explain what that thing over there is. He and Left took it down because it posed a threat to Yuru, but they've never seen anything like it in all their years as demons. Dara explains that those are vehicles of the modern era, but that isn't important right now because they've got more pressing matters to deal with. Thus, he asks Left and Right to help them make it down from the mountains safely as soon as possible. However, Left and Right cut him off because they don't take orders from anyone aside from their master, and last time they checked, their master was Yuru, not Dara. Dara yells that he understands that, but Yuru doesn't understand any of what's going on. And there's no time to get him up to speed because there are at least 2 dangerous demon users in the village right now, and they need to get out of here before they show up. However, just then, Gabby appears behind them, and she's annoyed because Left and Right look really strong. So dealing with them is going to be a pain for her. She assumes Yuru must be the one that Asa told her about, so she tells him to make this easy for himself and come with her quietly. But being reminded of Asa and everything that had happened in the village, Yuru flares up in a fit of rage. He demands to know if Gabby is the one who was responsible for all those corpses in the middle of the village, and she doesn't deny it at all, so Yuru plans to take her out. Left and Right tell him that all he needs to do is give the order, and they'll support him with their full strength. But Yuru says he has no intention of ordering them around. He's still not sure what this whole demon thing means, but as far as he's concerned, Left and Right are still the guardian deities of this village, so he is going to show them proper respect. As such, he won't order them, but he does have 2 requests he would like them to fulfill. First, he wants them to go look for any survivors and make sure that they are safe, and second, he says he wants to be the one who kills Gabby, but aside from that, they are free to do whatever they please. Left and Right are a little surprised by Yuru's hands-off approach as their master, but they can respect his confidence. Meanwhile, back at the tower, Asa is still being held in place by Granny's daemon, but she eventually manages to break free by tossing it to the side, so she prepares to go out into the village to look for Yuru. Before she leaves, she swears to get revenge for what the old hag put Yuru through. As Asa is running down the mountain, she comes across Danji and his mother, and Danji is worried that Asa might try to kill them, but she actually decides to spare their lives and leaves to continue looking for Yuru. Meanwhile, at the village entrance, since Yuru has given them free rein to do as they please, Right charges forward and leaps into the air to go look for survivors like Yuru asked, and at the same time, Left kicks the crap out of Gabby's daemon, sending it crashing into one of the mountain walls. With her daemon temporarily incapacitated, Gabby is now completely defenseless, so Yuru is able to fire a shot right into her leg. He prepares to fire another shot to finish her off, but Gabby sees it coming and calls her daemon back to fly her away to safety. However, Yuru isn't letting her get away so easily, so he chases after her, and the entire time, Dara is complaining because he just wants to get down the mountain already. In the middle of the village, Right finds the little girl that Gabby spared lying unconscious next to all the corpses, and after inspecting her, he is relieved to find out that she's still alive. However, from the girl's perspective, it looks like she's being poked and prodded by an invisible force since regular humans can't see demons. Right materializes his body in an attempt to set the girl's mind at ease and let her know that he is here to protect her. But seeing a large person appear right before her eyes startles her so much that she passes out again. Right takes the girl, along with a few other kids he managed to find around the village, to a building and lays them down for safety. So far, from what Right can tell, the invaders butchered every adult they found, but it looks like all the children were spared. Just then, Asa comes running by, and thinking she's one of the survivors in the village, Right calls out to her, but Asa can tell that he's a demon and attempts to use her powers to knock him out. However, Wright is no pushover, so the second he realizes that she's attacking him, he lets out a ferocious roar that cancels out Asa's blast. He yells at her and says it's rude to attack others out of nowhere like that, and normally, he would be more than happy to give her a fight, but he was ordered to take care of survivors, and he still assumes Asa is an innocent bystander. Asa realizes that fighting Wright would be too difficult right now, so she runs off to continue looking for Yuru, and as she leaves, Wright notices that her scent is awfully similar to Yuru's. Back on Yuru's end, Gabby is desperately trying to stay away from him, but Left manages to pry the mouth of her demon open, and as soon as Yuru has a clear line of sight, he fires another shot into Gabby's shoulder. This very well could have been the end for Gabby, but Asa shows up just in time to save her. She runs over to check on Gabby, but just then, Yuru points his bow at the two of them and threatens to shoot if they make any sudden moves. He demands to know who Asa really is, but she assures him that she wasn't lying when she said she was his little sister. Yuru doesn't think that's possible because she's way too tall to be his little sister, but she says the food down the mountain is a lot more nutritious than the stuff here, so she just grew more. Yuru still doesn't believe that this Asa is really his sister, but just then, Wright comes falling out of the sky and tells him that Asa isn't lying. He can smell her blood, and it's definitely the same as Yuru's, so there's no doubt that the two of them are related. If that's the case, then Yuru asks who the fake Asa that was kept in the hold all these years was, and Asa explains that it was a fake created by the old hag to make sure Yuru never left the village. Basically, one day, Asa and Yuru's parents said they needed to leave the village immediately, but they only managed to take Asa with them, and to prevent Yuru from running away like the others, the fake Asa was made and kept in the hold because they knew there was no way Yuru would ever abandon what he thought was his little sister. This is all a lot for Yuru to take in, and he's not sure what to do now, but Dara doesn't want things to get out of control here. So he tells Yuru to stand down and suggests they should back off while Asa is still preoccupied tending to her injured friend. Yuru tries to argue, but Dara reminds him that there's no guarantee they'll be able to beat Asa if this turns into a full-blown fight, and worse yet, the surviving villagers might get caught in the crossfire. So the best option right now is to retreat. Yuru realizes that Dara is right, so he agrees to stop attacking Gabby and turns to head down the mountain. After they've left, Gabby turns to Asa and asks why she didn't try to capture Yuru even though he was right there. Asa says she needs to take care of Gabby's wounds first, and she's just happy that her brother is still alive after all this time. Before long, Granny starts putting the village's barrier back up, so Gabby tells Asa that they need to get out of here before they are trapped. Meanwhile, further down the mountain, a couple is out on a hike together, and they are wondering what all the noise earlier was about because they remember hearing two helicopters fly in. One of them mentions hearing rumors of a lost village on the mountain where there shouldn't be anything, and if you end up wandering into that village, there's a good chance you'll never make it out again. Just then, Dara and Yuru come running down the mountain, and Dara notices that he can't see the village anymore, so the barrier may be back up and running by now. Yuru asks if that means they can never go back now, but Dara says that's not the case. It's difficult to return, but not impossible. However, Dara doesn't think that's such a good idea since the people after Yuru already know where the village is and how to get inside it, so it won't work as a hiding place anymore. As they make it to the base of the mountain, there's a girl named Hana waiting to pick them up, but she's pissed because Dara didn't say anything about him bringing along two daemons when he asked for the emergency pickup. Dara says it's a long story, but right now they need to get going. Yuru is still a little confused by all this, so Hana introduces herself and explains that she and Dara work together as daemon retainers. Dara asks left and right if they can smell any other daemons in the area right now, but they say there's nothing nearby, so they should be in the clear. In that case, Dara suggests they should probably get moving before they get some unwanted company, so he tells Yuru to get in. But Yuru says he isn't going anywhere near that thing. He has never seen anything like it before, so there's no way he's going to just walk into it. Dara understands why Yuru would be scared, so he prepares himself to give a full 10-hour YouTube video's worth of explanations about how a car works, but Hana doesn't want to sit there that long. So she just tells him that there are tiny little horses in there that make it go fast, and that's good enough for Yuru, so he agrees to get in. As for Asa and Gabby, Asa is done giving her first aid, so now they are just waiting for their pickup to arrive. Gabby is worried that they might still be trapped inside the barrier, preventing their team from finding them, but Asa says that isn't an issue. She knows they aren't in the barrier's range because she's getting signal, and even if they were, she could always just break it open again. A few moments later, Jean arrives with a full team to take Asa and Gabby down the mountain, so he tells his men to get the stretcher ready and load Gabby in. He asks Gabby how her wounds are doing, so she explains that she's still got an arrow in her shoulder, but the one in her leg has been taken out already, so she just needs a few stitches. Jean is a little concerned by the fact that Yuru isn't with them since getting him was the entire point of the mission, but Gabby says he just got away. Honestly, she's surprised that Jean didn't run into him on the way up here, but Jean assumes that he must have used a shortcut that isn't listed on the map. Finding him would be easy if they still had their helicopters, but they already lost both of those as well as all the soldiers they came with, and they didn't even manage to capture Yuru, so Jean is going to have a hard time explaining this one to the higher-ups. Gabby mentions that Yuru escaped with a guy named Dara, and hearing that makes Jean even more concerned because he realizes that Gabby must be referring to the Tadera, and he knows just how dangerous those retainers are, so he's starting to wish he had brought his daemons with him. Meanwhile, on the ride down, Dara explains everything that happened on the mountain, and he says he is pretty sure the ones behind the attack were the Kagomori. And now that they got his name and face, he's probably going to have to shave and move towns now. Just then, Left and Right sense something approaching, so they knock on the glass to warn Dara that there is a powerful demon approaching. This gets Hana worried since she didn't think they would come after them so quickly, but Left and Right explain that there's nothing to worry about because this daemon is an old friend of theirs. The woman's name is Oshirasuma, and she is excited to see Left and Right again because it has been 400 years since she last saw them. She asks if this means they have finally found themselves a new master, and they both confirm it, bragging that their master happens to be one of the twins that divide day and night. Oshirasuma is happy for them, and she asks what they intend to do now, but they are honestly not sure. Dara says they can hide out in a human city or something, so that's where they are headed, and Oshirasuma says she'd love to hear all about it when they get back. She then flies away, and once she's gone, Dara and Hana start freaking out because they never thought they'd get to meet her, but Yuru doesn't understand what the big deal is. The two yell at him to show some respect because Oshirasuma is a legit god, but hearing that makes Left and Right grumpy because they are gods too, yet they weren't given that kind of reverence. Dara and Hana explain that there are several different categories of demons. Some are pretty much gods, like Ashimaru, who lives alongside humanity. Some get directly involved with humanity and grant blessings, while others lead people to commit crimes. Meanwhile, back on the mountain, two soldiers who manage to survive are trying to make their way down, but they soon realize that no matter how far they walk, they never make it past that rock over there. So they must be trapped inside the barrier, and that means they can never leave. Before they get to town, Dara and Hana stop at a rest stop and tell Yuru that he's going to have to change clothes so he can blend in more easily. They also give him some onigiri to eat, but Yuru has never seen such luxurious and thoroughly processed food before, so he asks them if this was a gift from the gods or something. Yuru absolutely loves the taste, so Dara offers to give him some more, and Hana jokes that he's acting like a grandma right now. But hearing that, Yuru is reminded of what happened at the village, and he wishes Asa were here to try this because she'd probably love it. Just then, Right gets Dara's attention and asks him what this place is because he has never seen anything like it before, but Dara doesn't really know how to explain it. He tells Right that it's a spot where people can rest and restock when they are on long journeys, and both Left and Right seem amazed by the concept. Dara tells them they can come take a look inside if they want, but Right turns him down because it is their duty to stay by Yuru's side. And as such, he tells Dara and Hana that they can head inside and have a meal, and while they are gone, Left and Right will ensure that nothing harms Yuru. Dara and Hana decide to take them up on their offer, so the two head inside, but before they leave, Hana warns them not to touch the wheel of the car. Left and Right agree, but they ask her if she's not going to feed this strange horse, but rather than explain that it's not an actual horse, she just tells them that she fed it earlier. Inside, Dara and Hana have a nice meal together, and Hana asks how much Dara has told Yuru about the situation. Dara says he hasn't actually filled Yuru in on much since he seemed pretty shaken after he found out that the Asa he had been living with all these years wasn't his real sister. He didn't want to give him more than he could handle in one go, but Hana thinks he's being a little too nice. On another note, she asks Dara where he plans to take Yuru after this, and Dara can't take Yuru back to his usual house since his name and face have been compromised, so he's going to ditch that place. Hana tells him he's got it rough since he's technically homeless and has to take care of a kid, but Dara reminds her that it's her job to help him handle the situation. Hana understands that and promises to do everything within her power to help, and Dara is glad to hear that because he tells her she's going to have to marry him. Hana says she's not in the mood for that kind of joke, but Dara isn't joking about this. He says that if they are going to protect Yuru, then they need to blend in as much as possible, and the last thing they'd want is people spreading rumors. Hana asks what getting married has to do with any of that, so Dara asks how exactly he's supposed to explain having Yuru to his new neighbors if he doesn't have a wife. People are either going to think he's divorced or that his wife has died, and that's a breeding ground for gossip. Hana can't really argue with that logic, but she still hates the fact that she's going to have to get married for this. Meanwhile, out in the parking lot, Left and Right are searching all around the car to try and figure out where the horses are being stored, but just then, Yuru realizes that he ate all the food Dara and Hana left and he didn't think to save any for Left and Right. But they tell him there's no need to worry because they don't require food like humans do. Yuru is glad to hear that, but moving on to a more serious topic, he asks them to tell him everything they know about him and his sister. Unfortunately, there's not much they can actually tell him. For the past 400 years, Left and Right have sat unmoving in front of the village, so they don't know much about what goes on outside the village, or what happens inside the village for that matter. That said, they did see the people who came and went in and out of the village, and one day, they heard them talking about how a pair of twins who split night and day had been born. A few years after that, they started seeing Yuru's dad taking Yuru out on hunting trips, but they never saw even a glimpse of Asa during those years. They began to fear that Asa may have died shortly after birth due to an illness of some kind, but then one night 10 years ago, they saw Yuru's parents frantically fleeing the village with a little girl in tow, and that little girl had the same blood as Yuru, so they could tell that she was his sister. Yuru has finally accepted that that girl is really Asa, but he still doesn't understand why she would lay waste to the village, or why his parents ran away with her but left him behind. The only way he's ever going to get the answers he wants is by talking to his parents, and the only way he's going to be able to do that is by finding Asa and asking her to lead him to them. A little while later, Dara and Hana return, and Yuru notices that Hana seems a little upset, so he asks her if something is wrong, but she doesn't want to talk about it. She just tells Yuru that from now on, she and Dara are going to be his guardians, and that means they'll be responsible for him if he gets into any mischief, so he had better do his best to stay out of trouble. And speaking of trouble, she tells him that he's going to draw attention if he keeps sitting up there like that. So Yuru apologizes and gets down, but he asks if they are going to be okay since Left and Right have to sit up there during the car ride. Hana tells him that those two are fine because the majority of humans can't see daemons unless they themselves have a daemon or the daemon allows itself to be seen. A little while later, they all get back in the car to continue their journey, and along the way, Yuru asks Dira about the Kagomori clan he mentioned earlier, wondering if those guys are daemon users as well. Dira confirms that some of them are, and they are a major pain in the butt for him. They used to be allies of the village who lived down the mountain, but due to ideological differences, they split off, and Hana tells Yuru that he's better off not getting involved with people like that if he can avoid it. As for how they are going to avoid being tracked down by the Kagomori, Dara says he has a list of people they can trust. Meanwhile, in a building downtown, a woman is currently being chased down the hallway by a killer, and for someone who is running for her life, she's doing a terrible job because she gets to the end of the hallway, and instead of turning, she waits there for a solid 10 seconds to give the killer time to catch up. She then runs over to the elevator and gets in, but before the door could close, the killer catches up to her and gets in as well. He then starts inching closer with the knife, but just when he is about to stab the woman, her body begins to bend and twist, revealing that she was just a trap made using an anglerfish. And now that there's nowhere for the killer to go, the anglerfish begins devouring him. Meanwhile, Jean, the owner of that daemon, calls the woman who told him about the murder and assures her that she doesn't have to worry because he won't be causing any more trouble. At the same time, the murderer is getting pulled down by the anguished souls of all those he had killed in the past, and a little while later, when the elevator door opens, there's nothing left of him. A nearby woman is mortified when she sees the daemon leave the elevator, and as soon as Jean realizes that she's capable of seeing daemons, he tells her she had better keep this a secret. Back with Yuru, after the group reaches another rest stop, Yuru asks them to tell him everything they know, but they say they don't know much either. They aren't filled in on all the details by their higher-ups, and the job is basically just something their families have done for generations. Basically, Dara received 2 orders, to keep outsiders away from the village and to make sure the twins don't fall into enemy hands. Otherwise, all he does is relay info to the village and deliver supplies every now and then, and it's not really his place to question what the higher-ups ask him to do. So there are likely a lot of things that are kept secret from even him. Also, while on the topic of secrets, Dara informs Yuru that his real name is Ryu Tadera, but Yuru can still call him Dara if he wants to. Yuru recalls that, in the keep, Granny Yamaha seemed terrified by the idea that he would be taken, so much so that she just told Dara to get him out of there instead of helping her fight, so Yuru wants to know what makes him so special. Dara explains that there is a prophecy, and it says that when a twin boy and girl are born on either side of a sunrise during the equinox, the world will fall into chaos, The last time twins like that were born was 400 years ago, and in that era, war had split the nation into North and South, and further conflict had split both sides into East and West, and on both occasions, Daemon users were manipulating things behind the scenes. Yuru asks if this means he and Asa are cursed to destroy the world, but Wright says that's not necessarily the case. It's just that there are those who would wish to abuse their powers to that end. Yuru asks Wright what he means by powers, since he has never had any kind of special ability, but Left tells him it's only a matter of time before he awakens it. As a matter of fact, judging by how Asa was moving back in the village, she has likely already awakened her power, and since Wright saw it firsthand, he is certain that it was the power of Break. Break is the ability to forcibly unravel all things, and even the strongest barriers are no match for it. But there's another half to the ability. Seal, the power to forcibly close anything, and they are generally considered to be equal in strength. Yuru had never heard about any of this before, but it does explain how Asa was able to get into the village's barrier. But speaking of that barrier, Yuru never even knew there was a barrier in the first place, so he asks how Dara was managing to get in and out all the time. It's a bit complicated, but there's a specific route you've got to take to get through the barrier, and it involves a lot of twists and turns. So it's a real pain in the neck for Dara to remember it all the time, but it needs to be complicated so regular people don't end up wandering in. That said, it's not unheard of for people to accidentally follow the right path to get in, and as it turns out, Yuru's mother was a woman who happened to perfectly meet those conditions. Yuru recalls hearing his mom mention at one point that she came from somewhere far away from the village, and that she hoped she'd be able to return someday with her entire family. But this just adds even more questions to Yuru's list of things he's not sure about. The next morning, Hana leaves to go apartment hunting. And in the meantime, Yuru, Left, and Wright take a stroll through the park, and Wright and Left are fascinated by the sheer number of castles there. Yuru mentions that Dara actually told him about those things, and they aren't actually castles, they are called apartment complexes, and they are places where tons of people live, like compact vertical villages. Wright and Left say it should be pretty easy to hide Yuru from the people who are after him when the crowds are this big, but it's also going to make Yuru's hunt for Asa a lot more difficult. Dara and Hana are nice, so they probably don't have any bad intentions for him. But the fact that they have connections to the village that deceived him makes it difficult for Yuru to trust them, so he isn't going to tell them that he's looking for Asa. That said, he also doesn't fully trust Asa yet, even if she is his real sister. But before he makes any final judgments on who he can and can't trust, he needs to find out the truth. So he asks Left and Right to support him, which they are more than happy to do. Once the group arrives at the house that Hana and Dara set up, they are amazed because they have never seen anything like this before. Yuru is especially amazed by the fact that there's a tatami mat here, because back in the village, tatami was exclusively reserved for special occasions. And even then, it was never as good as this. He loves how good this feels, so he lies down to enjoy it, but just then, he finds a dog and a cat standing over him, and it startles him so much he freaks out. Hana apologizes for not warning him sooner, but she explains that these little guys are Kotetsu and Juro. Just then, Left and Right come in and apologize for not making proper introductions sooner, but they inform Kotetsu and Juro that they are the demons contracted to Yuru, and formally greet them both as fellow demons. Yuru doesn't understand what's going on because there's no way that cat and dog are really demons, but Kotetsu and Juro don't take kindly to being called animals, so they scratch and kick Yuru for being disrespectful. Right then explains to Yuru that these two aren't your average cat and dog, and that what he just said was very rude, so Yuru apologizes for his mistake. Moving on, since Dara and Hana are technically married now, they have decided to take Hana's last name as the name of the family, especially since Dara's name and face were already compromised. So Hana tells Yuru that if anyone asks, then his last name is now Dana. Yuru is surprised to learn that Dara and Hana both have last names, and he is worried that he has been disrespectful to them all this time because he now assumes they are lords, but Hana tells him that everyone around here has a last name, so she's not a lord. However, Dara then tells Yuru that Hana technically is a lord because she owns a mountain, and he's not wrong, but Hana says it's just something she inherited from her family, so it isn't maintained, and she can't exactly sell it to cash out either. In that case, Yuru asks her if she'd be okay with him hunting there in his free time, but Dara tells him that he's going to need to get a license to hunt, which makes no sense to Yuru, but those are the rules down here. Meanwhile, over in the Kagomori HQ, Asa is busy practicing with her powers, and she's trying to improve her accuracy by limiting her blast to the apple, and while she did manage to hit it at low output, when she tried using a little more force, she missed the target completely and blew a hole in the garden. Just then, her master returns home. And he's glad to see that Asa is hard at work training her powers, but she apologizes to him for destroying his garden in the process. He tells her there's no need to feel bad about it since it's just a yard, but it will need to be cleaned up. So he asks Jean to take care of that for him. And Jean passes the task off to his daemon, who eats the destroyed items. Anyway, Asa asks if there's a reason the master came to visit today. So he explains that he's here because he wanted to check on Gabi after he heard that she was injured in the line of duty. Gabi is surprised that the master came all this way just to check up on her, and she tells him he didn't have to do that, but she does appreciate the gesture. Asa asks Gabi if she would like an apple, and Gabi says yes, but then Asa realizes that she doesn't have a knife to cut it the way Gabi likes. Fortunately, Jean has her covered and has Makoto pull out a knife he keeps stored in there, but Gabi is a little hesitant to accept food cut with a knife that Jean probably used to stab someone. A little while later, some tea and snacks have been prepared for everyone, and the master tells Gabi that he wants her to focus on staying put and resting up so she can recover from her injuries. He also tells Asa that he wants her to stay here with Gabi. Now that Yuru is down from the mountain as well, it's safe to say that word is going to spread fast that both twins are in the city, and once that happens, it's likely that people might start coming after Asa as well. Thus, it's safer for her to stay here for now. As for the situation with Yuru, the master has instructed Jean to work on finding him as soon as possible, but that's not going to be an easy task for him, especially since he doesn't even know what Yuru looks like. Gabi realizes that she probably should have taken a picture of him when she had the chance, but there's no changing what happened now, so they go with the next best option and start drawing portraits of him. Unfortunately, Asa and Gabi aren't very good at drawing, but Gabriel over here is great at drawing, so he makes a pretty good picture. Jean says he will begin his search as soon as possible, but before he leaves, Asa catches up to him and warns Jean that Yuru's daemons have a good sense of smell, and they were able to identify her from the smell of her blood, so he should be careful of that. Later that night, back at home, Dara has just finished shaving his beard as a measure to avoid being recognized, but Hana really doesn't like the new look. Dara is about to head out, but he hasn't seen Yuru in a while now, so he asks Hana if she knows where he ran off to. Hana remembers Yuru mentioning that he wanted to go out on a walk to get the lay of the land, and that's fine and all. But Dara happens to notice that his knife is missing, and if Yuru took it, then if he gets found by the police, he will look really suspicious. Meanwhile, Yuru, Left, and Right are all standing on a nearby building, and he is still amazed by just how big the city really is. Left and Right ask him if he's worried that it will be difficult to find Asa in a place with so many people, but Yuru already has a plan for that. He remembers Left and Right saying they could track things by smell alone, so he tells them that all they need to do is to look for the smell of daemons and the smell of Asa's blood, and eventually, they'll find her. That's good enough for Left and Right to start their search, so they transform and drag Yuru into the skies so they can start looking. After flying around for a while, they eventually come across the familiar scent of Asa's blood, as well as that of demons, so they quickly land, and after Yuru has recovered from his flight sickness, Left asks him if they have his permission to cut down the demons as soon as they show themselves. Yuru asks if she's sure that's a good idea because he thinks they should at least talk to the daemons first to see if they are friendly, but Left tells him he can't expect all daemons to be reasonable. It is true that there are some who are capable of reasoning like Left and Right, but the vast majority of daemons are rather impulsive and will attack if given the opportunity, so he should keep that in mind for future reference. The scent of Asa's blood leads them into a parking garage, where Jean and his subordinates are standing, and Right reminds Yuru that they've got to stay on their guard, because if they were able to notice Jean and his crew, then there's no doubt that Jean must have noticed them as well. As far as Yuru can tell, Jean's crew seems to be human, but what really catches his attention is the fact that Asa is standing right next to him, and with his goal so close at hand. Yuru immediately charges forward in an attempt to get to her, but just then, Right notices that something is off about the smell of Asa's blood, so they try to stop him. But it's already too late because Yuru has fallen into the trap. Jean had been carrying around a vial of Asa's blood, which is what Left and Right likely smelled, in an attempt to trick them, but he didn't expect to capture Yuru so quickly. Meanwhile, back at home, Hana is still freaking out over the fact that Yuru might get in trouble out there. They have no idea that he was just captured by Jean, but the fact that he isn't a registered citizen here means he doesn't have any health insurance, and that means that if he gets hurt, then they are going to have to pay for his medical bills. They really can't afford to pay for that, so Hana gives her demons one of Yuru's jackets to smell, and asks them to track him down for her. While Juro is out following Yuru's scent, Kotetsu begins relaying the info to Hana using her phone's map, and Dara is honestly surprised because he has never seen a daemon use modern technology before. The daemons eventually track Yuru's location, but Hana can't believe he really managed to make it all the way to Tokyo in one night, and Dara is starting to wonder why Yuru would go there in the first place. Meanwhile, in the parking garage, Jin's men know that Yuru's daemons must be nearby, so they yell for them to show themselves already. Left and right don't really have much of a choice, so they come out. The man then starts trying to make demands that they surrender, but left and right just ignore him and keep walking forward. The guy tries to get them to stop by reminding them that they've still got Yuru as a hostage, but left and right are just thinking about which one of the men to take hostage in return. They can tell that Jin is the leader here, so they decide to go after him, and left tells Yuru to stay put in that scavenger daemon because it looks like it's pretty powerful, but it can't attack while it's busy holding Yuru hostage. That makes sense to Yuru, so he agrees to stay put. And Jin and the others are surprised because they've never seen demons giving orders to their masters before, and much less a daemon who's willing to leave their master in a dangerous situation. However, Yuru is really hands-off, so they are allowed to do whatever they want. Jin realizes that threatening left and right isn't going to do much, so he takes out an armory of guns, and he and his men start firing at left and right, but those bullets do absolutely nothing against them. Since physical attacks do nothing to them, one of the men summons his daemon and drops a turtle right on top of left. At the same time, the other one summons the honored bunny, who then proceeds to kick the shit out of right. Right is technically stronger, but the bunny is simply too fast for him to fight, so he asks left for help. But left is unable to move because the turtle has some kind of gravity ability that makes it really difficult for her to move. The situation is looking really bad for them, and Yuru can't just sit by and watch as left and right struggle, but he can't exactly break himself out of here on his own. That said, he does have a plan in mind, so he throws his knife at the turtle to get it off left, and once left is free, she proceeds to smash the scavenger's teeth to break Yuru free. Yuru then tells right to target the lights, and after he has destroyed them, the entire parking garage is plunged into darkness. The bunny tells Jin that he can sense Yuru's daemons running away, and Jin assumes that Yuru must be retreating, but that's not the case at all, because a moment later, Yuru appears behind Jin and slices his ankles. By the time the lights come back on, he is already holding Jin hostage, and left and right soon return to see how things are going. They had run away under Yuru's orders to lure Jin into a false sense of safety for Yuru to attack, and none of them suspected a thing because normally, demons never leave the sides of their masters. Of course, if Yuru had failed to capture Jin, left and right would have returned immediately to help him. Jin admits he should have seen this coming because he was told that Yuru was naturally gifted at hunting, and considering the fact that he grew up in a mountain village, of course, he'd be more adapted to fighting in darkness. Speaking of the village, Yuru demands to know who was responsible for the attack on his home, and Jin doesn't sugarcoat it. He explains that he was the one who orchestrated the attack, so the responsibility rests solely on his shoulders. Hearing that, Yuru is filled with rage, and he wants nothing more than to slit Jin's throat, but he holds himself back because he still needs him alive. He tells Jin to get his phone out and call Asa over here because he wants to talk to her. The guys are surprised to hear that Yuru just wants to talk because they were sure that he would say they should hand Asa over. Jin asks him if he's sure he doesn't want to reclaim Asa for Higashi village, but Yuru tells him that isn't what he's worried about. All he wants to do is ask Asa a few questions, so Jin suggests that Yuru should come back to the Kagamori HQ if he wants to see her. Yuru immediately refuses because there's no way he's walking straight into enemy territory, which is why he wants Asa to come here instead. Jin's subordinates ask Yuru to wait a little because they'd like to take care of Jin's injury first, since he might bleed out at this rate. Yuru says he made sure not to hit any lethal arteries, but he agrees to let them treat Jin's wound because he has no intention of killing Jin, since Jin wasn't trying to kill him either. After all, if Jin had wanted to, it would have been easy for him to take Yuru out with his first attack. Right now knows that the two fish belong to Jin, and the turtle and bunny must belong to that guy over there, but they haven't seen the bald guy's daemons yet. Left and right ask him where his daemons are, and he explains that his daemons are nearby, but they are just too big to fit inside the building, and he didn't want to wreck the place. Jin tells Yuru that he can't bring Asa here, but he assures him that if he comes to the Kagamori Manor, then no harm will come to him. Yuru still seems skeptical, but Jin reminds him that he already knows they have no intention of killing him. Yuru takes a moment to survey the situation, and even if he did kill Jin right now, he'd have a hard time getting out of here, especially with that big daemon outside. So he decides to agree to Jin's demands and says he will go to the Kagamori Manor to meet Asa, but he warns him that he had better not try anything funny, and Jin assures him that he will be treated as an honored guest. Meanwhile, Hana's daemon has finally tracked Yuru down, and it is keeping a close eye on him to keep track of what he's doing. Now that they are in agreement, Yuru tells Jin to hurry up and take him to Asa, but Jin tells him they still need to clean this mess up before they do anything else. Jin asks AI to help him with this, so AI begins swimming around and eating up all the debris and bullet shells that were left on the ground. Yuru is rather curious about what that thing is, so he asks Jin to explain, and he is informed that the pair are basically nature's janitors. I can eat anything, and Makoto over here can spit it up on command, so Jin has been feeding Ai useful items every now and then to use in combat should the need arise. While Jin is talking with Yuru, Left goes up to Haru and asks him how heavy that turtle is. Haru doesn't really know since he has never tried weighing it before, but he tells her that it can get even heavier than before. And hearing that is a serious blow to Left's pride, so she vows to train even harder from now on. Right also has a bit of a rivalry going on with the bunny since he doesn't like the fact that he was losing to it for a while back there, and the bunny wastes no time mocking him the second it gets the chance. This pisses right off. So he asks Yuru if he knows anything about hunting rabbits, and Yuru casually responds saying rabbit meat makes good broth, which scares the shit out of the bunny. Just then, a security guard who happened to hear all the commotion comes down to see what's wrong, and to avoid drawing suspicion. The group plays it cool and acts like they were just innocently standing there when the light bulbs all blew up all of a sudden. The guard is really confused, but he doesn't think they've done anything wrong, and he can't see the daemons either, so he doesn't see anything wrong here. Back at the Kagomori Manor, Asa was asleep when she got the message from Jin telling her that he's on his way here with Yuru, and the second Asa sees that, she freaks out and goes to wake Gabby up to tell her the good news. Gabby is surprised that Jin was able to find Yuru so fast, and now Asa is panicking trying to figure out what to wear when she meets Yuru. Along the way, Jin also calls the clan head and informs him that Yuru has agreed to come to the manor, and the head is pleased to hear that. But he's not at the manor right now, so he asks Jin if he could convince Yuru to wait until he gets back. He was originally planning to relax at a hot spring for the night, but if Yuru is really coming, then he's going to cancel his plans and head right back immediately. But before he goes, he asks his assistant to take this sick picture of him standing on top of a daemon so it looks like he's floating midair. They eventually arrive at the Kagomori clan home and drive in through the front gate, but Left and Right are confused because they had heard that the Kagomoris have tons of demons, yet they don't sense any daemons nearby at all. Jin explains that that's because they are still in the public section of the compound, and they should start sensing the other daemons once they pass the barrier. Once they pass through the barrier, just like Jin said, Left and Right can now sense tons of daemons all around them. Meanwhile, back in the house, Gabby's daemon informs her that Yuru has arrived, and as Asa is about to head out to meet him, she asks Gabby if she would like to come with, but she has no interest in meetings with the guy who put 2 holes in her body. She also still has quite a bit of trouble walking since her leg is messed up, so she has to stay back regardless. Outside, Hana's daemon has just tracked Yuru to the estate, but it can't go inside because of the barrier, so it just relays the information to the others. Dara and Hana are still desperately waiting to find out where Yuru is, but they are both extremely disappointed to find out that he's in Kagomori territory. They assumed he must have been captured when he went out on his own, so Dara gets up and gets ready to go pick him up. As he's heading for the front door, Hana asks him if he wants her to drive, but Dara says he will handle this one alone, since the Kagomoris already know who he is, and he wouldn't want to blow Hana's cover as well. Meanwhile, Yuru and the others have just arrived outside the front entrance of the Kagomori Manor, and they are amazed by how huge it is since they've never seen a castle like this before. But just then, a man named Asuma walks up to them. Jin isn't all too happy to see Asuma, so he asks him what he's doing here, and Asuma says that he simply heard that the other twin was coming here, so he wanted to come see for himself. Jin asks him how he knew about that since he only told Asa and the clan head about Yuru, and Asuma is starting to seem a bit suspicious, but he just makes up an excuse and says he overheard the news. A few moments later, Asa comes outside, and she is really happy to see Yuru again, so she asks if it would be weird for her to hug him, and Yuru shuts her down immediately because he still barely knows anything about her. He says he came because he has a few questions to ask Asa, and Asa says she's willing to answer anything, but before that, Yuru says they should probably take care of Jin's injury first. Asuma chimes in and suggests that since Jin is injured, maybe he should show Yuru around the manor instead, but Jin cuts him off and tells him that Yuru is his guest, so he has no business with Asuma. Asuma takes the hint and decides to leave Yuru alone, and as he is walking away, Jin asks to have someone stand guard by the gate and tells Yuru to stay close to him inside the manor, just in case. Once they get inside, they take Jin to the infirmary so he can get some proper treatment for his ankle, and the doctor can hardly believe that he got his ankle cut by a machete. After Jin has been patched up, He remembers the blood he's carrying and hands it back over to the doctor. Speaking of the blood, Yuru thinks it's despicable that they would cut Asa just to lay a trap for him with her blood, but Asa explains that it was actually her idea to use her blood. And with modern technology, drawing blood is easy and almost painless. Asa also mentions that the Kagamoras feed her a ton, so losing a little blood won't affect her at all. Yuru is still having a hard time wrapping his head around all of this, but then Asa asks him if now is a good time to ask for a hug again, and Yuru turns her down again. Speaking of hugs, he asks why Asa is so big when she's supposed to be the same age as him, and Asa explains that the food down here is really nutritious, so if he eats it for a while, he's bound to have a growth spurt as well, and Yuru admits that he really does like the rice they have here. But that's beside the point. He came here to ask questions. So he walks up to Asa and asks her where their mom and dad are, because he wants to see them. However, Asa tells him that their parents aren't here, and she has no idea where they are. It's a long story, so Asa asks Jin to fill Yuru in on all the details. Jin explains that a lot happened after Asa and Yuru's parents fled the village. Eventually, they settled into their new lives down here, and at one point they decided to visit Yuru's mother's hometown. Yuru recalls his mother mentioning that she used to live down the mountain to him at one point, and she said she'd take him there someday. Jin informs him that his mother's home is called Okinawa, and it's an island in the far south, so the only way to get there is by boat or plane. As far as the people from her home knew, she had gone missing in the mountains when she went hiking and never came back, so they all thought she was dead, and Yuru's mother wanted to let them know that she was okay, so she and Asa and Yuru's dad left Asa in the care of the Kagamoras and got on a plane to visit. However, when the plane landed, they were gone. Yuru asks how that's possible, but they aren't sure, because when the plane took off, they were definitely on the plane, so they must have vanished during the flight. They had a daemon-wielding guard with them for protection, but he vanished as well. Yuru thinks the guard might have been in on it, and Jin doesn't deny that possibility, but they have no way of knowing for now. Yuru yells at Asa and asks how she could ally herself with people who allowed their parents to go missing, but she still fully trusts the Kagamoras because after they left the village, they were constantly being targeted by assassins, so if the Kagamoras hadn't taken them in, they probably would have died long ago. While all this is happening, an unknown group is preparing to attack the Kagamori estate, and they think this is the perfect opportunity because not only are both twins present, but both Gabi and Jean are injured, so they won't be able to fight back. They are still a little hesitant since Yuru's daemons are quite strong, and Asa is pretty powerful in her own right, but her powers should be weaker at night, so they decide to launch their attack. All of a sudden, left and right sense something approaching, so they look out the window and see two Yun and gang demons charging at them. While that's happening, Gabi is still sound asleep, so Teth tries to wake her up because there's danger close by. Gabi eventually gets up, and that's when she notices these two forbidden experiment-looking demons at her door, but she isn't worried because with teeth, taking care of them should be light work. As for Yuru and the others, they are currently running through the building trying to escape the demons, and Yuru is mad because he thinks Jin led him into a trap, but Jin tells him that those daemons don't belong to the Kagamori clan, so intruders must have broken through the barrier. If that's the case, then he asks if it's okay to destroy the daemons. Jin says that ideally he wants to capture their master, because the daemons are just following orders, and specifically capture them because if a daemon's master is killed before it is transferred to a new master, it will essentially become a ghost and vanish in a few decades. Yuru understands, so he promises to try not to kill the master when he finds them, but for now, he asks Jin if he has a bow and arrow in there that he can use, so Jin asks Makoto to spit something up for Yuru, but Yuru has never seen bows like this before, so he's not sure if he's going to be able to use them, but he's still going to try anyway. Yuru fires an arrow at the daemon, but he completely misses because the bow isn't properly adjusted. Meanwhile, Jin makes a call to Gabi to see if she's doing alright, and she tells him that she was attacked, but it's nothing to worry about. More importantly, she's wondering how these guys even managed to get into the manor in the first place since this place is protected by a barrier. But in any case, they are going to have to stop the attackers if they want to get some answers. So she asks Jin if she has permission to kill, and he tells her she's free to do as she pleases. So Gabi bites the head off one of the demons while its partner was trying to rescue it, and shortly after, she proceeds to take out the second one as well. Meanwhile, Jin and the others are still running through the halls, and since Gabi seems to be doing fine on her own, Asa says she's going to try to stop those two with her power, but she apologizes to Jin in advance because she's probably going to wreck a good chunk of the mansion in the process. Jin tells her it's fine, and that he will cover for her if she gets in trouble with the master, so Asa gets ready and asks Yuru to help her create a distraction so she can attack. However, before Asa could use her ability, the two daemons fused and activated their ability, trapping Yuru and Asa in two separate rooms of white and black. Meanwhile, back in the real world, the others are shocked by the sudden disappearance of Asa and Yuru, but they can tell that the demon had something to do with it. The daemon immediately attempts to run away, but Haruo already saw that coming, so he drops his turtle right on top of it, pinning it to the ground so it can't escape. He's not exactly sure what happened just now, but if this thing has the power to make people disappear, then there's a chance that it may have had something to do with the disappearance of Asa's parents. Jin agrees with Haruo, so he tells him he's free to use whatever means necessary to keep that thing in place. But Haruo mentions that there are still quite a lot of enemy demons around, and both left and right disappeared as well, so it's up to Jin to handle them even though he's injured. Meanwhile, Asa still finds herself trapped in pure darkness, and she tries calling out to see if anyone else is here, but it looks like she's completely alone. And she's starting to panic because it reminds her of how she used to be kept all alone in the village. However, before she has a full breakdown, Right speaks up and tells her she isn't the only one here. Right is surprised by how dark it is here because even he can't see a thing, but he can still smell his way around, and from what he can tell, Asa has the scent of fear coming off her. He asks if she's afraid of the dark or something, and Asa admits that she hates being alone in dark places, so Right pats her on the head and assures her that there's no need to be scared because she isn't alone. That makes Asa feel a lot better. But she's still really worried about Yuru, so she asks Right if Yuru is somewhere in here as well. Right tells her he can't smell anyone else in this area, so they are likely the only ones here. But he doesn't think there's any need to worry since Left should be with Yuru. Besides, he came to Asa's side specifically because he wanted to talk to her. Asa is surprised to hear him say that, but Right reminds her of when they first met in the village. She tried to use her break ability on him, but he stopped it. And ever since he came to this manor, she hasn't said a single word to him. So he's sure that she must have realized that he's her natural enemy. Asa admits that she realized it, and she recalls hearing her parents mention that Left and Right have the ability to stop the break and seal abilities from going out of control. So that means that if Yuru ever acquires the seal power, then Left will become his natural enemy as well. Meanwhile, Left has just fallen from the sky and lands right next to Yuru, which startles him a little. He asks her if she has any idea what this place is, but Left hasn't got a clue because in all her years, she has never experienced anything like this before. From what Yuru can tell, even though the room being pure white makes it hard to tell, there's solid ground here. And while Left was flying earlier, she ran into a ceiling. So it looks like they are enclosed on all sides by a barrier. Yuru asks her if she senses any enemies in here, but Left says they are the only ones present at the moment, so there's no immediate danger. In that case, Yuru asks Left if she can help him adjust his aim with the bow while they are here. Left has no problem with it, but she asks if he's sure he wants to do that right now. And Yuru says there's nothing else for them to do but wait, so he might as well make good use of the time. Left asks if the confusing situation doesn't scare him, but ever since the village got attacked, literally everything has been confusing to Yuru, so he has just gotten used to it now. Yuru takes a few steps back and asks Left to hold out her machete so he can use it as target practice. But as Yuru fires his first arrow, he hits Left square in the forehead. Yuru asks her why she didn't at least try to dodge the arrow if she could see it was going to hit her, but Left says she didn't think it would be a problem since her body is as hard as stone. Yuru understands that, but he still feels bad about hitting Left, so he tries to adjust his aim as quickly as possible. Left asks him if he isn't worried about Asa, but Yuru says there's no need for him to be worried because if this is a barrier, then she should be able to use her break power to get out any minute now. Meanwhile, outside, Asa has just broken her way out of the demon's barrier, and she then proceeds to break the demon's contract with its master before registering herself as the demon's new master. And the demons seem to be perfectly happy with the new arrangement, so they accept Asa as their new master. Asa then asks them if they happen to swallow Yuru as well, and when the demons confirm it, she tells them to spit him out immediately. Once Yuru and Left have been released, they immediately target the demons, but Asa tells them to stop because they aren't the enemy anymore. Yuru asks for a proper explanation, so Asa and Haruo explain that she already formed a contract with the daemon, and since it has the ability to make people disappear, its former master might know something about their parents. That's good enough for Yuru, so he asks how they are going to find the guy, and Asa simply asks the daemon to snitch on its former master for her. The demon happily obliges and points towards the guy hiding behind that wall, and while Asa is having a hard time spotting him because it's dark out there, Yuru wastes no time and pops the guy in the shoulder with an arrow. Meanwhile, on the other side of the manor, Jin is busy dealing with the rest of the intruders, and so far, he hasn't had much trouble, because all of these guys have been absolute weaklings. He soon meets up with Gabby, and they're both pretty much done with the people they've encountered so far. But all of a sudden, a guy who was hiding nearby gets shot by an arrow, and now that they've seen him, Jin is about to finish him off. But since the guy is disarmed and has already lost his demons, he decides to capture him alive instead. Meanwhile, Yuru is sitting atop the roof, waiting for his next victim, and for a second, he spots something in the bushes way over there. But he doesn't see any movement now, so he decides to move on. It turns out that there really was someone hiding in the bushes, and this guy is a cut above the rest. But even he could tell that if he tried to take Yuru head-on, he'd be shot down before he ever had the chance to fight back, so he's calling it quits and heading home for the day. Another member of the intruder team realizes that this is a losing battle, so he tries to escape through the front gate, but unfortunately for him, the gate was being guarded, and before he knows what hit him, he has been knocked out. By morning, the entire battle is over, and Jin goes up to Yuru to apologize for dragging him into this mess. A few moments later, Gabby comes out as well, and she's still salty about Yuru shooting her with arrows, so she starts yelling at him. Yuru may have let Gabby leave last time, but he still hasn't forgiven her for killing all those people back at the village, and they are about to start fighting. But Asa gets between them and asks them to calm down. She tells Gabby not to antagonize Yuru because he was a big help in stopping the intruders, and Gabby can clearly see that, so she decides to lay off for now. On to more pressing matters, they still need to get as much information out of these guys as possible, so they start asking questions. First, they go up to the guy Yuru shot in the shoulder and ask him why he attacked. He explains that he was simply offered a bunch of money to capture the twins, and aside from that, he doesn't know anything else about the mission. The others don't think the guy is being honest, so Haruo steps up the interrogation tactics a little and places his turtle on the guy's knees, which hurts a lot. The guy swears that he really doesn't know anything about the mission because this was a one-off job, and the person who recruited him was just some guy with a beard and a camo jacket, and he had never met anyone else on this squad before today. Unfortunately, the guy he's talking about is already dead, so there's no way for them to question him. Jin then asks if he knows anything about a married couple from Higashi village that went missing, but the guy had never heard about anything like that, and he also wasn't involved in whatever went down, which leaves Yuru with very few leads to work with. Haruo asks if there are any more questions they'd like to ask him, and Asa says she wants to know what the guy named his demons so she can address them properly. However, the guy says he never really put much thought into naming them, so he always just called them two, these, and nuts. Asa is appalled when she hears that because all demons deserve to have proper names, and now she can see why they were so eager to sell him out. But the guy doesn't understand what the big deal is since he just sees demons as tools, so there's no reason for him to bother getting attached. Hearing him say that really ticks Gabby off, so she's about to chomp the guy's head off, but Jin tells her not to because he doesn't deserve to die over a simple statement. She ends up agreeing to leave him alone, and as she is walking off, the guy is absolutely terrified now. The rest of the captives don't want the same thing to happen to them, so they all say they'll talk, but they don't really have much information to give since they weren't told much, so this is a dead end. In the meantime, Asa starts trying to think of proper names for the demons, and they really seem to like her, but she tells them not to get too attached, since she's only going to be their master temporarily. That said, she does think they are really cute. Yuru asks Asa if it has been like this ever since she left the village, with her getting attacked by assassins all the time, and that is pretty much what it has been like for her. So Yuru can understand why Asa became the way she is. He also asks if that's how she lost her eye, and Asa tells him that if he wants to know the full story, the truth is that she died once before, and the people who killed her were assassins from Higashi village. The first time Yuru ever felt pure killing intent was back when he was a lot younger. He was out hunting with his father when all of a sudden, he was attacked by a man he had never seen before. At first he thought it was a bandit, but when he looked into the man's eyes, those weren't the eyes of someone who was doing this for money. His only goal was to make sure Yuru died that day. The fear he felt was so overwhelming that he didn't know what to do, so the best he could manage was to drive his knife into the man's chest, but that wasn't enough to stop the man. Fortunately, it did buy Yuru enough time for his father to shoot the attacker in the head with an arrow, and that was what killed him. After the attacker had been taken care of, Yuru's father ran over to Yuru to check on him, and to his relief, Yuru was completely unharmed. But this was still a nerve-wracking experience for him. So his father decided to use it as a teachable moment and told Yuru that he should remember what that killing intent felt like, because he may end up having a lot more people come after him in the same way, and if anyone ever directs their killing intent towards him, he wants Yuru to strike back without hesitation. For now, they retrieve their weapons from the body and dispose of it by throwing it off the side of a cliff, but Yuru is still clearly shaken. So his dad decides to spend the night camping out in the mountains with Yuru before they head back to the village tomorrow. While camping, Yuru's dad told him to make sure he doesn't tell anyone that he was attacked out here. Yuru is surprised to hear that and doesn't understand why, since there's a chance that the rest of the village could be attacked as well, but Yuru's dad assures him that the village won't be attacked. He doesn't want to explain why, but he just asks Yuru to keep this a secret from the others. The next day, Yuru and Mime return to the village together, and the villagers were all happy to see that they finally made it back because they were starting to worry after he didn't come back last night. Yuru makes up an excuse and tells them that he just happened to chase his quarry too far into the woods last night, so before he realized it, it was already too late to head back, so they spent the night in the forest. They still find it hard to believe, but the explanation is perfectly plausible, so they believe him. Mine and Yuru continue further into the village until they eventually run into Granny Yamaha, and Mine tells her the same story to explain why he and Yuru didn't come back last night. She looks awfully suspicious, but Mine doesn't give her the chance to question him too much and asks if his wife is with Asa because he'd like to go see her. Inside the house, Nagisa was hanging out with Asa, and Nagisa is relieved when she sees Yuru and Mine because she was getting worried as well when he didn't return last night. Asa was also worried, so he apologizes to her for the trouble, and when Asa asks if either of them are hurt, Yuru assures her that they are perfectly fine. He then sits down to start telling Asa all about his day, and while he is doing that, Mine whispers over to Nagisa to tell her about the attack that happened, and when she hears what happened, she goes wide-eyed because she knows what that means. Shortly afterwards, Yuru's parents fled the village, and he was led to believe that they abandoned him and Asa when they fled, but it turns out that he was the only one left behind, and the Asa he spent the last 10 years of his life with was an imposter, or at least, that's what Asa has told him so far, but he can't guarantee that all of it is true. And then Asa goes on to tell him that she was once killed by a Higashi village assassin. After they had fled the Higashi village, the Kagamuras took them in, and things seemed to have calmed down a bit. But then, Asa's parents went missing, and then last year, when she turned 15, she was kidnapped by 2 Higashi assassins and died once, which is how she awakened the power of break. After she died, she found herself in a space of pure darkness with a skeleton road leading to the daemon over there. At first, Asa was really confused by everything that was happening since the last thing she remembers was having her neck cut by those Higashi assassins, and the daemon informs her that she died as a result of her injuries. Upon hearing that, Asa asks if that means this is hell, but the daemon tells her it's not. This is a space that exists just before the Shadow Realm, kind of like a boundary between life and death. Asa is rather shocked that the legend really is true, because it mentions something about the twins traveling to the Shadow Realm to gain the powers of a daemon, but the daemon says that last part was a translation error because she's never actually going to get all the way down to the Shadow Realm. Even so, that still means that the people of Higashi intentionally tried to kill her, and the daemon says that's likely because she can't gain the power of break unless she dies. Now she has 2 choices to choose from. She can either accept the power of break and be revived, or choose to remain dead. And if that's the case, then all she needs to do is step off the path and fall down into the Shadow Realm. However, if she chooses to accept the power of break, she will be able to break anything, like the head of an enemy commander or invisible barriers. With that kind of power, she may even be able to become a hero, but it is not without its downsides because from the day she awakens the power, she will be surrounded by people who wish to use her power for their own selfish goals. As such, she may end up experiencing a living hell from which there is no escape, but Asa says her life couldn't get much worse than it already is. Her mother and father were already kidnapped because of her, and if she weren't born, then none of this would have happened. But as she says this, she realizes that Yuru is in the same boat as her. So she asks the daemon what happened to him. The daemon tells her it doesn't know where Yuru is or how he is doing, because he is going to go to the place where the power of Seal is, not here. Asa can't stand the idea of dying while not knowing if Yuru is safe or not, especially since he's going to have assassins coming after him just like they did with her at some point, so she can't let herself die yet. She chooses to accept the power of break, and back in the real world, we see Asa being held captive in a dark, empty room by the Higashi village assassins. They had just slit Asa's throat and were waiting for her to revive according to the legend, but it has been quite a while, and they are starting to worry that they may have messed up the ritual. They are sure that she's the right little girl since they remember seeing her locked in that dark cage back when she was still at the village, but if she hasn't resurrected yet, then that must mean they did something wrong. They start panicking at first, but then they remember that they still have Yuru, and he has been completely brainwashed by Higashi village, so he will do whatever they tell him as long as they use that fake Asa to force his hand. But just as they say this, Asa regains consciousness, and she doesn't take too kindly to those two talking about using her brother like that. So she activates the power of break to break free from the ropes around her wrist, and the second her hands are free, she proceeds to break the two assassins with one punch. Meanwhile, outside, Gabby was searching throughout the alleyway looking for Asa, and when she finally found the building she was being kept in, all she saw was Asa sitting alone in her chair with two bodies on the floor. After that day, she has killed a lot more people than she ever thought she would, and she apologizes to Yuru because after the things she has done, she probably isn't the innocent little sister he remembers anymore. While Asa and Yuru continue talking, Gabby heads back to her room to look for what's left of those two demons she killed, and after she finds their remains, she gives them a proper burial in the garden to pay her respects. At the same time, the other members of the clan are busy cleaning up all the blood stains from the battle, but just then, there's a knock at the front door. And when they open up to see who it is, they find Dara there waiting. He cheerfully apologizes for coming here so early in the morning, but he introduces himself and says he's here to pick up Yuru. They immediately call Jin and inform him that a member of the Tadara clan is here because they don't know how they should respond to the situation. Jin is just as surprised as they are, but Yuru kind of expected Dara to come looking for him sooner or later because he has been gone all night and he didn't even tell him before he left. So far, Asa has told him that she fully trusts the Kagamori clan, but Jin also said that the Kagamori clan was a real pain in the butt, and he also has connections to Higashi village, which lied to him for years and attempted to kill Asa. He's not sure who to trust in this situation, so he decides that it would be better to hear both sides out at the same time. Thus, he asks Jin if he can have Dara come to the front gate so they can all talk together. Jin tells the guards to take Dara to the front gate, and he instructs them not to attack him under any circumstances even though he's a Tadara. The group then starts heading toward the main entrance to meet Dara, but along the way, they end up running into Asuma, and he can see that the manor is pretty badly damaged, so he wonders how this happened. Jin explains that several daemon wielders broke into the manor last night trying to kidnap Asa and Yuru, and considering how much noise they made, Jin finds it odd that Asuma didn't come down to help at all. He asks him what he was up to, and Asuma says he was simply sleeping, but Jin finds it even harder to believe because there's no way Asuma didn't hear all the commotion with that excellent hearing of his. A little while later, Hager comes out of his room, and he is also surprised by all the destruction here, but in his case, Jin understands why he didn't come out to help since he was probably passed out from the all-nighters he pulled to meet the deadline. He asks what happened, and he is informed that they were attacked by demon wielders who were after the twins, and when he hears that, he immediately asks if Asa is okay, so Asa tells him she's perfectly fine. And the same goes for Yuru as well. Hager is pleased to finally get a chance to meet the second twin, but just as he's introducing himself to Yuru, he sees left and right staring down at him, and he is absolutely terrified because they look really scary. They eventually make it to the front of the mansion, and a few moments after that, the boss's car pulls up because he is finally back. But to everyone's surprise, they see Dara get out of the car with him. Dara explains that he happened to run into the Kagamori boss at the front gate, so he offered him a ride here since he's Yuru's guardian. Gonzo goes over to Yuru to greet him, and while he's doing that, Jin is giving Dara the side-eye because the Tadara clan is notorious for never showing themselves while performing their duties as liaisons to the Higashi village, so he doesn't understand why Dara is being so casual about stepping right into enemy territory. Left and right are also pretty confused by this, so they ask Yuru if he thinks the Kagamoris and Dara are actually working together, but Yuru doesn't think that's the case, since he can sense that both Gonzo and Jin genuinely want to kill Dara right now but are holding themselves back. But their relationship isn't really important right now. So Yuru gets straight to the point and asks Dara why he didn't tell him that he can gain the power of Seal if he dies like Asa did. And he has the same question for Left and Right because they must have known about it as well and didn't tell him either. Dara admits that he intentionally kept the information secret from Yuru, but that's because he's a kind and caring brother, so someone used Asa as bait to blackmail him. Knowing that he could gain power if he dies, Yuru probably wouldn't hesitate to kill himself. And knowing you can die once and be fine makes it a lot easier to be reckless. Left and Right agree with Dara and also add that there's no guarantee that he will be able to come back to life either, because they recall that from the pair of twins born 400 years ago, one of them died and failed to revive, so it's possible that the same might happen to Yuru as well. That revelation made everyone quite tense, so to lighten the mood a little, Gonzo invites everyone inside for some breakfast, and he even promises not to poison Dara's food while he's here, so Dara agrees to take him up on the offer. However, When they enter the manor, Gonzo realizes that the main hall is an absolute mess, so Hikaru asks him if he would like him to fix it, and Gonzo implores him to do so. Hikaru then steps up, and after taking a moment to think through what he needs to do to fix all this, he activates his daemon's powers, and with a wave of his hand, he erases all the damaged parts of the building. Then with another wave, he reconstructs the mats and walls, all in a matter of seconds. Both Dara and Yuru are amazed by this since they've never seen anything like it, so Hikaru explains that his daemons are called Whiteout and Ink, and when he wants to fix something, he uses Whiteout's power to draw over it, and then he uses Ink's power to fill in the details. It's an impressive power, but it requires a lot of imagination and visualization, so Haggar is only able to use his power effectively because of the creativity that comes from being a mangaka. But Yuru has no idea what a mangaka or manga even is. He knows the Kagomori family is involved in a lot of brutal stuff, and it would cause a lot of controversy if people found out he was a part of the family, so he uses the pen name, Haggar, to avoid getting cancelled. Now that Hikaru mentions his pen name, Dara realizes that he has seen that name credited in a bunch of films as the original creator, so it looks like Hikaru's manga must be pretty popular. But Dara had no idea that he would be a Kagomori. Hikaru explains that he's the oldest son of Gonzo. Asuma is the second born, and Jin is the youngest, but that comes as a huge surprise since Jin looks way older than the rest of them. Asuma adds that Hikaru is set to become the next clan head, so they'd all benefit from cultivating a friendship with him. But Hikaru doesn't like the idea of being put in charge of this shady clan, because unlike Asuma and Jin, he still has a decent set of morals, and he doesn't want to get mixed up in whatever it is that they've got going on right now. Dara notices that a few of the spots Hikaru fixed are pretty monochrome, so he asks him if it's going to be alright, and Hikaru tells him that he doesn't need to worry about it since the natural colors will bleed into it over time, so it will go back to normal. But now that he's taking a closer look at it, he realizes that he messed up the reconstruction because he forgot to add any wear and tear on the new parts of the building to make them look as natural as possible, and now he wants to redo the entire thing. But Gonzo tells him to just wait until they are done with breakfast first. A few minutes later, the servants of the manor come out to place the cushions down for everyone, and Gonzo tells Yuru that he doesn't need to worry about proper etiquette or traditions here, so he can just sit wherever he'd like, and a moment later, a few tiny daemons come out holding some more cushions for Yuru, left, and right. Left and right are surprised that they are also being given seats even though they are demons, but Gonzo responds saying they are all his guests, and all guests are treated equally in this manner. Once everyone is seated, they all begin eating, and Jin is the first to break the silence by asking how Dara managed to find out that Yuru was here in the first place. But Dara says that's a trade secret, so he can't tell them. Jin then mentions the fact that the mansion was attacked by several daemon wielders last night, and he wants to know if he was the one behind it. But Dara denies having any involvement in that. After all, he has no reason to want to attack them in the first place. Jin finds that hard to believe, especially since the assassins attacked immediately after Yuru showed up, and that can't be a coincidence. On top of that, Jin has heard rumors that the Tadara clan specializes in slipping through barriers, so he believes Dara is the one who helped them get past the manor's barrier. Dara clarifies that he's only trained in slipping through Higashi village barriers, and he really didn't have anything to do with this attack. He also asks Asa if she has been doing alright here, and Asa tells him that there's no need to worry because she's fed well here. And more importantly, the mansion is safe, so she doesn't get attacked by assassins here, although last night was a bit of an exception. They usually don't like letting Asa go outside since there's a high risk of assassins coming after her. But when it comes to medical checkups, she has to go to a regular hospital, which puts her at great risk. In fact, it was on one of those hospital visits that she was kidnapped by those Higashi village assassins, and she is still really pissed about all the stress Higashi has put her through. But Dara tells her not to blame him because he's not the one giving the orders, but he apologizes for all that the Higashi village extremists have put her through. Just then, Jin recalls something he wanted to find out about, so he asks Asa how she handled the family register issue since it's a pain to handle insurance without a register, but Asa says she doesn't have one. Her mom was originally from down here, so she was going to have her register eventually, but then her parents were kidnapped. Dara is shocked to learn that Asa and Yuru's parents are missing, and he can tell that Asa thinks Higashi village was behind this, but he has never heard anything about their parents going missing, and he's sure that the Higashi village community that he knows would never do something like that. Gonzo asks if Dara really expects them to believe him, but Dara retorts, telling them that for all they know, it could have been some of the Kagomori clan extremists who carried out the attack since he had heard that not everyone in the Kagomori clan agrees with Gonzo. And speaking of which, Dara would like to know what Gonzo actually wants to do with the twins in the first place. Gonzo explains that he genuinely believes that the world is better off without their power, since it always throws things into chaos whenever the twins are born. He also believes it would be best if Asa and Yuru were the final set of twins, and to do that, it would be best to get rid of Higashi Village, since the twins can only be born there. He believes it is a miserable village bound by outdated values, and since the Kagamoras share their blood, it is their responsibility to put them to rest. However, Asuma apparently disagrees with his father's opinion because he thinks that it is the responsibility of those with great power to peacefully govern the world, under supervision, of course. Dara asks if he is proposing that the Kagamoras should be the ones to take control of that power, and that's exactly what he means. He wants the power of Break and Seal to continue to exist, but only under the control of a suitable organization. This is all a lot for Yuru to take in, so first things first. He wants to thank Left and Right, because when he asked them if he was a curse being whom the world would be better off without, they immediately denied it, and that made him happy, because it made him feel like it was okay for him to continue living. He then finishes his food, and thanks the Kagamoras for the meal before pointing at Asa and saying he still hasn't forgiven her for what she did to his village, but she has a habit of apologizing for everything, even things that aren't her fault. So he wants to know who is making her feel so ashamed of herself that she feels the need to apologize for everything. He can't say he knows the full history on the prophecy, but he doesn't think it's right that people get to dictate how they live their lives just because they are the destined twins, so he wants to make it clear that no matter who comes for him, he won't run or hide. But when he captures them, he's going to make sure to squeeze them for all the info they've got. After Yuru says this, Asa gets up and yells at him for being so reckless. She says he can't survive without running or hiding, and the only reason he can say that right now is because he hasn't experienced what it's like to be hunted every second of every day, so she tells him it is too risky to choose to fight back. She tries to get Left and Right to talk Yuru out of this, but both of them seem pretty thrilled about the idea of getting to fight all the time. Gonzo asks Yuru if that means joining the Kagamori clan isn't an option for him, and Yuru immediately answers no, because earlier, Gonzo called Higashi Village a miserable place, but at the end of the day, that was still his home, and he had a bunch of friends there. He understands Gonzo's ideals, but understanding him is not the same as accepting those ideals, and personally, Yuru could never bring himself to side with someone who did that to his village. He appreciates them helping look for his parents, but he wants to do things his own way, so he says that he will work with Dara to find them himself. Dara honestly wishes Yuru would just lay low for the time being, to avoid drawing attention, but if he really wants to go looking for his parents, then it's Dara's job as his guardian to help him. After that, Dara says it's about time for him and Yuru to get going, so Asa thanks Yuru for coming and asks Left, Right, and Dara to look after him for her. They then head out to the front gate together, but as they reach the threshold, Asa says she can't go any farther because it's dangerous out there, and she's worried that assassins may attack at any moment. Yuru steps up to the threshold, and from what Asa just said, he can tell that she's terrified of going outside, which means that even though she isn't in the village anymore, she's still confined to a box, with the only difference being that this box is bigger. Just then, Asa says she has something she wanted to show him, so she takes out a photo she has of their parents, and Yuru is speechless when he sees their faces again after such a long time. And so are Left and Right. They don't understand how it is possible to draw such a detailed picture on a little block, but Asa explains to them that it's a photo, not a drawing, and to demonstrate, she asks Yuru to pose with her before taking a picture together. Yuru is amazed by the fact that photos are able to capture moments so perfectly, and Asa is just happy that she managed to get a picture with Yuru. Left and Right also want to have their picture taken, but unfortunately, Asa tells them that daemons don't show up on camera since they don't actually have material bodies. Just then, Yuru asks Asa if he can see that photo of their parents again, so she hands it to him, and he takes a long, hard look at it since it has been over 10 years since he last got to see their faces. Asa tells him she can send a copy to his house if he wants, and Yuru says he would really like that, so Asa asks him what his address is, but Yuru only just learned that the prefecture name is Guntama, so he has no idea what the actual apartment address is. Asa is disappointed since she was really hoping to get Yuru's address so she could visit him later. She then asks Dara if he can tell her what the address is, but he says he can't reveal that kind of information to someone who works with the Kagamoras. Jin mentions that it would be nice to have a way to contact Yuru in case anything happens regarding the investigation into his parents' disappearance, but Dara doesn't feel comfortable giving out his phone number, so instead, Jin hands him a business card for a bar and explains that it's one of the businesses owned by the Kagamoras, so if Dara heads there, he can ask them to get in touch with Jin for him. The group is now about to leave, But just before they do, Asa tells Yuru that their parents had intended to take him as well, but Granny Yamaha got in their way, so they could only manage to grab Asa before they ran away. Hearing that means the world to Yuru, since it means his parents really didn't abandon him, and that's a massive relief. He says just hearing those words made coming here worth it, and before he finally leaves, Asa runs up to him and gives him a hug, telling Yuru to take care of himself. She then says goodbye, and as soon as she leaves, Yuru falls to his knees because he can't believe he let his guard down like that, but the way Sagami placed her hand on his back confirmed at least one thing: that girl is most definitely his sister, and he is frustrated that he has been kept away from her for so long. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Jin is thinking about following Yuru back home to find out where he lives, but Asa tells him not to because she doesn't want to break Yuru's trust. However, while Jin agrees not to, Asuma has already sent a familiar to keep tabs on them. As the group is walking back, Dara realizes that Yuru seems a little upset after everything he has learned, so he decides to try cheering him up by showing him around town so he can see the wonders of the modern world. He takes Yuru on boat rides, on the subway, and to a derby where Dara ends up losing a ton of money, but Yuru ends up having a ton of fun. He tells Dara he was really impressed with the horses they have here, and he asks if they can buy one, but Dara tells him they don't have that kind of money. He says Yuru can ask for anything else he wants, but things like cattle are out of the question for now. In that case, Yuru says he could use some new arrows since he is running low, but now that Dara thinks about it, he's not sure where to even buy arrows around here. Yuru tells him he can make arrows himself as long as he can get his hands on some materials, and if materials are what Yuru is after, then Dara knows the perfect place. He takes Yuru to a department store, and Yuru, left and right, are all amazed by the sight of so much stuff in one place. Dara asks Yuru what kind of materials he will need to make his arrows, so Yuru tells him he will need arrow bamboo, some thread, and a good knife. As for the fletching, he plans to use the feathers from that pheasant he sold Dara right before all this happened. Once they have everything they'll need, they head to the checkout, but as the lady at the counter is ringing them up, she notices left and right standing behind Yuru, and she's too terrified to say anything, so she just keeps ringing them up and acting as polite as possible. And after they are gone, she tells her manager she wants to take a break because she's starting to hallucinate. Left and right mention to Yuru that the woman over there seems like she could see them, but she doesn't seem like a daemon wielder, so she's probably just a person who happens to be able to see daemons. Before they leave, Dara suggests they should pick out some new clothes for Yuru, and more importantly, some underwear as well. Yuru doesn't really understand these underwear things because his loincloth works just fine, but unfortunately, Dara doesn't know where to buy loincloths, so Yuru is going to have to get some of these instead. Speaking of underwear, this reminds Yuru of something, so he tells Dara that when he used to go hunting out in the mountains, he would sometimes get attacked by bandits, and he would always kill and bury them. But he did think it was odd that the bandits were always so clean. They didn't have any of the dirt on them that you would expect from someone who lives in the mountains, and on top of that, Yuru recalls that the bandits were wearing these kinds of underwear as well. He can only assume that they came up the mountain specifically to kill him, but Wright thinks it might have been the village sending those assassins and pretending they came from down the mountain. After all, they'd lose credibility if Yuru ever found out that the people who tried to kill him came from the village. However, if Yuru were led to believe that an outsider killed him and he gained seal, he would still place his trust in the village. Yuru says they don't know for sure that the bandits were sent by Higashi village, but he also doesn't trust them after everything that has happened, so he will keep looking into it. Dara informs Yuru that aside from him, there are only a few other people who know how to get through the Higashi village barrier, and that narrows the search down a lot. Left asks Yuru if he plans to attack them, and he confirms as much, saying he wants to take the initiative in hunting them down. But speaking of hunting, Yuru mentions that there are currently 3 people tailing them since they left the Kagamori Manor. Dara had already figured out as much, which is why he didn't want to head straight home. He's not sure if they are from the Kagamori clan or not, but he tells Yuru to stay cool and not let them know that they've been spotted for now. Yuru understands, but just then, he asks Dara if it was really okay for him to take those photos back there because now the Dara have a record of what his face looks like. But Dara says he's not too worried about it because he already expected his face to get leaked. After all, the Kagamori Manor likely has a ton of cameras all over the place. Meanwhile, over at the Kagamori Manor, Asa is busy looking at the picture she took with Yuru because she misses him so much already. But she hates looking at Dara's face in the pictures, so she edits him out of them. A few moments later, Jin comes over to her and asks if he can have the pictures she took of Dara because he'd like to have some references so they can keep an eye out for him. But Asa tells him she doesn't have them anymore, which leaves Jin a little shocked, but there's nothing he can do about it now. So he decides to go check if the cameras by the front gate are still functioning to see if they picked up any images of Yuru's face. A little while later, they all gather in a room to interrogate the intruders who survived, and according to what they said, they had no idea what they signed up for. They were both just looking for some mercenary jobs to make some money when they were contacted to participate in the attack here. They eventually show their phone call logs as proof, and from the looks of it, they were contacted roughly 30 minutes before the attack began, so it makes sense that they really don't know anything. Still, the fact that they were able to get into the manor at all is rather concerning since there's a barrier in place that prevents anyone from entering aside from members of the clan and those they invite in. They ask if there was any member of the Kagomori clan waiting at the entrance to let them in, but Tachikawa says there wasn't, the west gate was just completely open. When she says this, Gonzo can't believe it because there is no west gate into the manor. There's clearly something going on here, but to make sure she isn't lying, he asks Fuyuki to investigate her thoroughly. Fuyuki then summons his demons and has them grab Tachikawa's demons. Tachikawa yells, telling him to stop, but Gabi reassures her that Fuyuki isn't going to kill her daemons, so she doesn't need to worry. Fuyuki's daemons allow him to identify all relevant information related to the owner of the daemons he holds, so his book begins reading out everything about Tachikawa, including her full government name, her address, her browser search history, and the fact that she only took this job to pay for her mother's expensive medical bills. After that, Fuyuki realizes that it may be a bit insensitive to read all the information out loud, so he just flips through the book instead. And after learning everything he needs to know about her, he moves over to Hamura. He also learns that everything Hamura said earlier was true, and like Tachikawa, he was only working this job to earn extra money, but in his case, it was for a gambling debt rather than medical expenses. Now they know that the two were telling the truth, and they really aren't connected to the mastermind of the operation at all, so they are cleared of any further suspicion. And now that that's settled, Gonzo tells them that if they are truly in such desperate need of money, then they are free to work here at the manor. Both Tachikawa and Hamura are surprised to hear him say that, and they are grateful for the offer, but they ask if he really isn't going to punish them for attacking his home. Gonzo tells them the amount of work they are going to have to do will be punishment enough, which sounds terrifying to them, but he's not a complete monster, so he is still going to pay them salaries. He also offers to cover all of Tachikawa's mother's medical expenses since he understands that she was working for her mother's sake, but Hamura is on his own with his gambling debt. He tells them they can start their work by cleaning up this mess they made, and as he is leaving, his bodyguards ask him if he's really sure it's okay to leave those two here. Gonzo says there's no harm in it since they have all of their personal information and there's nothing suspicious about them. Plus, it will be beneficial to keep them around as expendable soldiers if necessary. He also says that once the mastermind of the operation is found, they are to be killed along with anyone associated with them. Meanwhile, the others start working to clean up, and Hamura asks Asa if she could return his daemons to him. Asa asks him if he has finally chosen proper names for them, and Hamura has actually given it some thought, so he says he will call them Ohaji and Deifuku. The others think it's pretty funny that Hamura came up with such cute names, and since he seems to have come to understand that daemons should be treated with care, Asa asks the two if they'd like to go back to him. However, they are still holding a grudge against him after how poorly they had been treated, so they immediately refuse. In that case, Asa says she's going to hold on to them a little longer, and speaking of which, Gabi asks if Break is okay with Asa having those two as her demons. Asa says Break hasn't made any complaints yet, so they must be relatively compatible, and if that's the case, then Gabi asks why Asa doesn't just keep them, since it'd be nice to have even more protection on her side. After all, they never know when the enemy might strike again. Meanwhile, over at the department store, Dara and Yuru have just finished shopping for a new set of clothes and shoes for Yuru, and now they are leaving the store, but it looks like they are still being followed, so they may have to fight back soon. Speaking of fighting, Yuru apologizes to Dara because he took his machete without asking and left it back at the Kagomori Manor, but Dara says it's not a big deal since they wouldn't be able to walk around with a machete in the first place without the police stopping them. Besides, if it's weapons he needs, Dara's got a whole stockpile of them back at his old base, and he's been meaning to restock for a while now, so he decides to stop by and arm himself. Left and right ask him if it's a good idea to head to his base while he's being followed, since they'll find out the location, but Dara says he was actually planning to abandon the place, so it won't make a difference if they find out where it is. They end up taking several turns to get to Dara's house, and Dara warns Yuru to make sure to stick close to him so he doesn't get lost. They eventually arrive at Dara's old house, so Dara heads inside, and he tells Yuru there's no need to take his shoes off since they won't be here long. In one of the rooms, Dara has a whole arsenal of weapons stockpiled, and he tells Yuru that he's free to pick whatever he wants, so Yuru decides to take an axe as his weapon. Meanwhile, outside, the spies have confirmed that Dara indeed went inside with Yuru, but they are too scared to go in after them, so they decide to call it a day and start heading back. However, before they know it, Dara and Yuru appear behind them. They all take out their guns in an attempt to attack, but Dara beats them to it, shooting one, while left and right take out the other two. The last guy standing attempts to run away, but as he is running, he notices that there's a lot of mist around him for some reason, and he ends up in an open field with nothing but Dara's house in sight. Dara tells him that there's a thin barrier separating this place from the rest of the outside world, and the only one who knows how to get in or out is Dara, so the spy may have been able to follow him in, but he's never getting out of here on his own. The man tries running away again, but he ends up tripping over a skeleton, and Dara explains that the guy used to be a Kagomori spy who happened to follow him in here one time, and he never made it out. He also mentions that there are tons of bodies like that one scattered all over the place, so unless the spies want to end up dying like that, they had better start talking. Just then, Wright tells Dara he senses a daemon nearby, and a moment later, one of the spies' heads gets lopped clean off his shoulders by an extremely long arm. Another spy is killed by a daemon with extremely long legs. Left hands the last spy over to Yuru and Dara and tells them to watch him and stand back for now because they wouldn't stand a chance against these daemons. After all, they are Tanaga Ashinaga, and they are every bit as fierce as their legends depict them. Dara wakes the granny up with a smack to the head, and she freaks out when she regains consciousness because she thinks he's going to kill her. But Dara just asks if she can move because they need to get ready to run soon. The granny has no idea what he's talking about, but then she looks up and sees long arms and long legs facing off against left and right, and she is terrified. At first, Dara and Yuru had thought that long arms and long legs were the granny's daemons, but considering her reaction just now, that doesn't seem to be the case. That means they must belong to a third party hiding somewhere, and Dara can tell that left and right seem to know long arms and long legs, so he asks them what the story is here. Left and right explain that years ago, arms and legs were causing trouble up north. So, with the help of the monk who possessed the power of seal at the time, they sealed arms and legs in the mountain so they wouldn't cause any more problems. On that note, left and right ask how they managed to escape in the first place, and arms and legs say they had a little help from a nice master who dispelled the seal, so they are finally free again after 1,000 years. Dara recalls hearing of the legend about arms and legs, and apparently, they used to cause trouble by stomping on rice fields, but arms and legs tell him that that story is completely bogus. All they did was kill some people, and maybe eat a few children too, but they don't think that's so bad. As a matter of fact, they are pretty hungry right now, and they can see a pretty appealing kid standing in the back over there, so they are considering eating Yuru. They also recall their master mentioning the fact that twins had been born once again in this era, so they start wondering if Yuru may be one of them, and they don't want to get sealed away again, so they may just have to kill him first. They assume whoever is the master of left and right must be the one with the power, and as soon as Dara hears them say that, he yells out, commanding left and right to attack. Right is about to tell Dara that he doesn't have the right to command him, but then he realizes what Dara is trying to do, so both he and left play along and pretend Dara is their master, so arms and legs won't target Yuru. The trick works perfectly, so now both arms and legs believe that Dara is the biggest threat here, so they go after him first. Left and right jump in to protect Dara, but arms and legs are too bendy for them to properly fight back. Dara tries to help a little by firing his gun at arms, but it doesn't do much damage. Arms and legs are starting to realize that the fact that no attempts have been made to seal them yet means that they must not have access to the power of seal after all, and without that power to assist them, left and right are at a severe disadvantage here. While left and right continue to face off against those two, Dara finally makes his way to safety behind some rocks, and he is relieved that he didn't get squashed out there. But Yuru asks him why he put himself at risk like that by pretending to be left and right's master. Dara says protecting Yuru is part of his job as his guardian, so this much is the least he could do. But that aside, they've still got a couple of questions for the granny. So Yuru holds his axe to her neck and Dara asks her if it was the Kagemoras or Higashi who sent her. The granny admits that she's from the Kajimori clan, but Yuru keeps pressing her because he knows all the Kajimori aren't the same, so he wants to know who specifically sent her. She immediately tells him that it was Asuma who sent her here, and Yuru remembers Asuma from breakfast earlier, so he knows who she is talking about. The granny goes on to explain that she was specifically ordered not to hurt any of them and to just follow within reason from a safe distance, but she didn't expect to get dragged into a daemon battle out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Asuma has been keeping an eye on the whole situation with the power of one of his daemons. Dara is glad to hear that the granny didn't come here with any murderous intent because it means they don't have to worry about her now. Since she can see the daemons, Dara assumes she must have daemons of her own, so he asks her to bring them out so they can help Left and Right fight. However, the granny says she left them at home, because otherwise, Left and Right would have been able to sense her coming a mile away. Dara yells at her for being completely useless, but she asks why they even need to bother fighting Arms and Legs in the first place, since if this place is the Lost House, then if they leave them here, Arms and Legs should never be able to get out. Dara did consider that as a possibility, but since he doesn't know how Arms and Legs even got in here in the first place, it would be troublesome if their master knows the way to get out and starts causing mayhem again. In that case, Yuru suggests going out and looking for the master since they must be around here somewhere. After all, daemons often prioritize their master's safety by staying nearby at all times. Dara agrees with Yuru, and since Arms and Legs think he is just a random kid right now, he should be able to move around relatively freely without them coming after him. With that being the case, they come up with the plan to have Dara and Left and Right distract Arms and Legs while Yuru goes to look for their master, and Yuru says he expects the granny to come help him as well. The granny is hesitant because that sounds pretty dangerous, but it's not like she's got much of a choice under these circumstances, so she pulls out her emergency knives and tells the others they need to hurry this up because she still needs to get home in time for dinner with her husband. While Arms and Legs are still busy with Left and Right, Dara tries to make his way into the house's armory to get himself some weapons to use, but Arms ends up spotting him and tears through the wall trying to capture Dara. Right manages to knock Arms' arm away to protect Dara, but Arms counters by wrapping up his legs and throwing him aside. Dara is relieved that he didn't get grabbed, and he's also a little bummed that his house got smashed up, but at least now he has easy access to the armory. Meanwhile, out in the plains, the granny is out looking for Arms and Legs' master, and at first, she thinks she has found them when she spots someone hiding behind a tree, but when she gets there, it turns out to be a dead body. Dara did say that there were a ton of bodies lying around here, but this is way more than what Yuru was expecting, and at this rate, it's going to take forever for them to find the master out here. Back with Left and Right, Arms and Legs are currently trying to crush them with their limbs, but their bodies are simply too hard, so Arms and Legs realize that they are never going to take those two out, so they are much better off targeting their master and leaving Left and Right stuck as stray daemons. Just then, Legs suddenly has one of his eyes blown out, and neither Arms nor Legs have any idea what just happened. But it turns out Dara is posted up on a hill with a sniper rifle, and though normal bullets didn't do any damage to them, this thing packs way more of a punch. Dara then fires another shot, destroying the calf of Arms, and one more destroying Legs' last good eye. With this much damage, Arms and Legs are now severely weakened, so Left and Right are able to pick them up and toss them into each other. However, to make up for their current wounds, Legs and Arms join forces. This has Dara sweating a little since with those two so high up, they are bound to spot him sooner or later, but the first one they actually spot is the granny, who had been hiding in a tree. Arms and Legs usually don't like the taste of old people, but they need to eat something to heal themselves, so she will have to do. The granny begins pleading for her life and tells Arms and Legs that they would be much better off going after Yuru because he is the twin that is going to gain the power of Seal, and he is also Left and Right's real master. Arms and Legs pause for a second after hearing that because finding out that Yuru is the one who will gain the power of Seal is big news to them. And the granny's plan here is to wait for the moment that Arms and Legs stop paying attention to her to go after Yuru so she can slice his arm clean off. But while they do want to take him out, they still need to heal themselves right now, so they plan to eat the granny anyway. Fortunately for her, Yuru comes to the rescue and uses his axe to cut into the arm, forcing Arms to release the granny, and Yuru admits that he is indeed the Seal power holder and Left and Right's master, so their business is with him. Arms and Legs are a little unsure about what to do here since if Yuru hasn't gained the power of Seal yet, that means if they kill him, he will gain the power to seal them away. They could try killing him again after that, but there's no way Left and Right would just sit there and let them do as they please. However, Yuru then proceeds to order Left and Right to just sit there and let Arms and Legs do as they please. Left and Right are greatly opposed to this idea, but they trust Yuru's judgment, so they agree to stay out of this until he says so. And Yuru begins running and evading Arms and Legs' strikes on his own. He's just doing his best not to get crushed to death right now. Dara has been trying to line up another shot on Arms and Legs, but they are moving so fast that it's difficult to aim at them, and before he can get a good angle on them, Arms throws a decaying skull at Dara because he just spotted him. However, he doesn't have time to switch focus right now, so he keeps chasing Yuru. So far, Yuru has just barely managed to avoid being killed, but then Arms picks up a large tree and chucks it at Yuru, narrowly missing him but knocking him unconscious at the same time. Now, Arms and Legs are standing over him, and they begin thinking of all the ways they could torture Yuru. But all of a sudden, he opens his eyes and reaches his hand out toward Arms and Legs. They both flinch in pure terror because, as far as they know, Yuru may have just died and come back to life with the power of Seal awakened. But it turns out that this was all part of Yuru's plan to trick them. He never died, and he doesn't have the power of Seal, but he distracted Arms and Legs long enough, so he tells Left and Right that it's time for them to do their thing. Left and Right then proceed to separate Arms and Legs and throw Arms into the river before dropping a massive stone on him so he can't get back up. And while Arms is drowning in the river, Legs is left all alone, and without his eyes or arms to guide him, he can do nothing but stand still while calling out to his brother. Before long, Dara lines up a shot on him and blasts his neck clean off. This puts an end to Arms and Legs, and after their bodies disappear, all that's left are the relics that led to their creation in the first place. Right tells Yuru that it was pretty crazy of him to use himself as bait to distract Arms and Legs like that, but he says he was relatively confident that he could evade them, which is why he took that gamble. Just then, a little butterfly flutters past the group, and Left immediately grabs it out of the air and squishes it. She says this was a daemon that had been following them the entire time, but because its presence was so small, she was having a hard time pinpointing its location earlier. The granny recognizes it as Asuma's daemon, or rather, a tiny part of Asuma's daemon that can be used for reconnaissance, so he likely sent it out so he could keep an eye on Yuru personally.